Discover the incredible journey of a grandma who overcame trauma and found amazing hope at 75. Mabel Thompson sat at her kitchen table, the familiar creak of the old wood evoking memories trapped within the walls of her late husband's home. Surrounded by flickering autumn sunlight, she stared at a blank canvas lying in front of her. Could she actually do this? The thought consumed her. An artistic endeavor at her age seemed both ridiculous and exhilarating. But how could she transform the whispers of hidden dreams into something tangible? This was her chance to break free from the shadows of the life overshadowed by sacrifice and obligation. Much of Mabel's life had been consumed by others, her husband's aspirations, her children's needs, her own desires lost in the fog of selflessness. Now, with her loved ones involved in struggles of their own, she found herself paralyzed by uncertainty about her own path. Deep down, she feared that pursuing her art wouldn't just be a dream. It could be an act of selfishness, a betrayal to her past sacrifices. Would taking this step make her appear foolish to the very people she wanted to inspire? The echoes of laughter from her grandchildren bounced around the house like fading memories, a reminder of every sacrifice made. Then there was Alex, her youngest grandchild. The troubles he faced at school twisted knots of concern in her stomach, stirring something angry yet profound within her. What kind of legacy am I leaving behind? She thought, as a wave of determination surged against her fears. If she could confront her own hesitations, maybe Alex could too. She took a deep breath and registered for an art class. The uncertainty gnawed at her, but hope flickered. Mabel entered the classroom, overwhelmed by the vibrant hues swirling before her. Among splashes of paint and encouraging smiles, she felt something shift. Yet, as she soaked in the acceptance of her peers, doubt clawed back at her. What if the local gallery owner dismissed her work? Wasn't she just an old woman playing with paint? As she applied her first stroke, that voice of doubt echoed sharply in her mind, heightening her fear of inadequacy. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each brushstroke, Mabel fought against her insecurities, her pulse quickening. This was the moment she would reclaim her voice, her identity. But with every touch of the brush, the thorny conflict within her grew. The specter of her husband loomed, his dreams unfulfilled and burdened by local skepticism. She paused, heart racing, battling inner turmoil. The temptation to retreat into the safety of her established past tugged fiercely against her newfound ambitions. What if she truly revealed herself through her art, only for it to be ridiculed? Mabel's fight wasn't just personal. It was a battle for her family's future, an attempt to recontextualize their history by reclaiming her lost identity. In this emotional vortex haunted by past heartaches and the dread of judgment, she stood at the precipice of something profound. Would she take the leap, unearthing truths not just about herself but her husband's burden, risking it all for a chance to inspire Alex? Or would she succumb to the weight of years gone by, fading away like the autumn leaves outside her window? The brush trembled in Mabel's hand, the bright paint on the canvas swirling like her thoughts. Her heart raced with a mix of exhilaration and dread, and she could feel the blood rushing towards her ears, drowning out the supportive murmurs of her classmates. The canvas had become an emotional battlefield, a reflection of her life, layered with hidden stories and overlooked dreams. She pressed the brush down, creating a bold arc of blue. It felt liberating, almost defiant against the fears that imprisoned her. The whispers in her mind were relentless. What will people think? You're too old for this. Her past was like a vice squeezing tighter with every stroke. Memories of her husband's unmet ambitions gnawed at her, reinforcing a narrative that painted her as a mere caretaker of others' dreams. But in that art room, surrounded by curious expressions and shared laughter, she sensed the tide shifting. Mabel understood she was not only an artist, she was a grandmother with a message, a voice yearning to be unveiled. As she added touches of yellow, the colors vibrated, illuminating the depths of her conflicted feelings. Would this newfound pursuit lead her to a brighter future? Or could it expose her to ridicule from the very people she wished to uplift? The juxtaposition of hope and uncertainty felt like a weight pressing down on her shoulders. Each choice of color became symbolic, a reflection of her painful past intertwined with the promise of her budding identity. The instructor approached, kneeling beside her, a spark of encouragement in his eyes. "Mabel, your work has such life," he said, pointing at the canvas. "It's vibrant, bold. Don't hold back. Let that energy loose." The words resonated deeply, a tether to the possibility of embracing her artistry instead of doubting her worth. Maybe Mabel could harness that energy not just for herself but also to spark something in her family. Determined, Mabel poured herself into the process, allowing emotions to manifest through colors and shapes. Whatever doubts loomed, she resolved to confront them head-on. She channeled her tumultuous thoughts into the strokes, a visceral recreation of her stories, the joy, the grief, the sacrifices. Layer by layer the canvas evolved, echoing her truth. As her vision came alive, clarity emerged. This was more than just self-expression. It was a reclamation of her narrative, a testament to resilience. But with clarity came confrontation. The moment she stepped outside the art studio was another encounter with reality. It beckoned with the weight of her past. Would Alex see her struggle and be inspired? Or would he recognize her fear and retreat into his own cocoon of doubt? The thought of him battling his challenges alone tightened her chest. The legacy she had pondered was not only a matter of personal fulfillment, it was intertwined with his fate. Mabel's heart beat like a drum as the shadows of her insecurities clawed at her confidence. She had given so much of herself to others that forging this new path felt both liberating and terrifying. Yet, the greater conflict loomed ahead. Could she expose her burgeoning talents to the world, risking judgment from her peers and reverberating doubts? That night, as she sat alone with her thoughts, her canvas gazed back at her, silent yet full of unspoken promises. The urge to share her art burned fiercely, guided by an unwavering hope that her journey could transcend her fears and encourage Alex to tackle his obstacles. As Mabel stared at that piece of art, the realization dawned. She stood at a crossroads and it was time to move forward. Tomorrow would be the day she showcased her creation at the gallery, but would she be ready to face the scrutiny, both of strangers and the echoes of her past? A shudder ran through her as apprehension collided with determination. The moment to confront her demons was fast approaching, and Mabel could feel the stakes rising with every heartbeat. What would she reveal about herself, and what legacy would she forge for Alex? Mabel's breath quickened as morning light spilled into her living room, illuminating the masterpiece that had consumed her thoughts. It was a creation born from her deepest fears and highest hopes, and as she prepared to unveil it, a wave of uncertainty surged over her. Standing before the canvas, she felt a seismic shift within her. The colors vibrated with a life of their own, daring her to take a newfound leap of faith. Yet, an internal tempest threatened to drown out her resolve. What if she was not good enough? What if the viewers found her vulnerability absurd? An old woman attempting to reclaim a part of life that should have been left behind. Mabel hesitated, recalling the years spent prioritizing the needs of others, always shielding her dreams beneath layers of obligation. She could almost hear the voices of family members, the murmurs of doubt that had lingered like shadows over her creativity. Was it too late to carve a legacy that resonated with courage rather than complacency? As she sipped her coffee, its warmth coursing through her, Mabel engaged in a mental rehearsal of what the gallery would hold. She envisioned the faces of onlookers, the sound of their conversations swirling around her, and even more harrowing, their silent judgments. Overwhelmed, anxiety clawed at her chest. Would her heart-stirring creation compel others toward appreciation or scorn? With each tick of the clock, Mabel galvanized her thoughts into a mission statement. This art was not just for her. It was a channel for her voice. "I must do this," she whispered, grabbing a notebook to articulate her thoughts. As she penned her intentions, the act of writing ignited a sense of power within. The strokes on the canvas mirrored her own reclamation of purpose. Each color held a piece of her journey, a step towards healing. Determined, she noted down the reasons why she wanted to share her art. To inspire not just Alex, but any soul who carried the weight of doubt and regret. The realization lit a fire in her chest. The legacy she crafted had the potential to return hope to others. Mabel understood that it wasn't just about artistic talent. It was about the courage to reveal her true self. Each brush stroke was a battle won, a reminder that life could be vibrant even in the twilight years. As the clock inched closer to the gallery event, the tension bubbled in her veins. Mabel dressed with intention, choosing a flowing dress that mirrored the colors of her artwork. It felt right. She was not merely filling a role of a participant but stepping into the shoes of an artist. With each movement, she acknowledged the implicit choices she was making, not just to dress up, but to unveil her spirit. The flicker of doubt still danced at the periphery of her mind, but she forced herself to breathe through it. She kept reciting an affirming mantra, "This is my story to tell." With newfound strength, Mabel snatched the keys to her car and headed toward the gallery, repeating her mantra as if it could shield her from the echoes of disbelief. As the gallery came into view, her heart thumped loudly, an electrifying mix of anxiety and resolve. It was now or never. She could feel a profound decision looming on the cusp of her thoughts. Would she allow fear to dominate? Or would she seize this transformative moment to stand tall and proud? Upon reaching the entrance, she paused, glancing back at the road she traveled. What lay ahead felt as daunting as it was exhilarating. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever judgment awaited her. Mabel pushed open the door, facing a room full of unknown faces and the weight of her legacy. The time had come to confront not just the world but herself. What awaited her beyond that threshold would determine not only her artistic future, but the very essence of her self-worth. As Mabel stepped into the gallery, the flood of light enveloped her, illuminating not just the walls festooned with art, but the very fabric of her being. There was a moment, suspended in time, where she felt both terrified and invigorated, knowing she had walked through the veil of her fears. The buzz of quiet chatter and nervous laughter filled the air, a whirlwind of emotions flipping in her stomach. This was it. Her moment of confrontation had begun. She cast her gaze around the room, absorbing each visage. Some were familiar, the natural lightness of her friends and family reminding her of the love that propelled her to this point. Yet, the reality of strangers examining her work sent a fresh wave of apprehension spiraling within her. Was she prepared for their scrutiny? In that moment, Mabel reminded herself of the mantra she had clung to, "This is my story to tell." But as she approached her masterpiece, the culmination of hope, pain, and redemption, an unfamiliar chill gripped her frame. What if her narrative felt too raw or personal for the very world that thrived on art's entangled layers? Through this haze of uncertainty, she noticed a small group of individuals gathered around her canvas. Mabel's heart raced. They were engrossed, absorbed by the colors she had poured her soul into. Their interpretations, their reactions, she longed to hear their thoughts, yet feared their judgments. Would her emotions resonate or simply fall flat? Deciding to lean into the moment, she found her footing, moving closer but lingering at the periphery. She listened intently, straining to catch fragments of dialogue. One woman's eyes shimmered with appreciation as she spoke of the deep blues and vibrant golds, commenting on how it reminded her of dreams deferred yet unforgotten. Mabel felt a spark ignite within her, a direct acknowledgement of her emotional journey woven into the fabric of that canvas. With growing confidence bursting through her insecurities, Mabel stepped out from the shadows and approached the group. "Thank you for your thoughts. I wanted to evoke that very feeling of dreams," she said, her voice steady, yet the tremor of vulnerability still present. Surprised glances turned toward her, and for a moment she was a bit unsteady, yet something shifted within her. Instead of retreating, a newfound resolve surged forth. Here was her opportunity to connect, to share not merely the strokes of paint, but the essence of self-discovery that lay beneath each color. As the conversation unfolded, Mabel openly shared her journey, how art became her voice when words failed, how creating this piece encapsulated decades of struggles and triumphs. She discovered that her own narrative prompted others to share theirs, and with every exchange, the strength of her purpose crystallized. This was why she had chosen to expose herself to vulnerability. Each connection was a testament to the power of shared experiences. The profound realization struck her: this gathering was not solely about her art making a statement. It was about the stories intertwined within each thread of her creation, inspiring others to embrace their own narratives without fear. She had transformed from an apprehensive artist into an empowered storyteller. Even as acceptance bloomed within her, the specter of judgment had not fully receded. Conversations veered into murmurs of critique, and Mabel could feel familiar doubts creeping back. What if they eventually dismissed her work once the initial awe faded? The questions pressed heavily against her heart, but rather than retreating, she chose to confront them head-on. She took a deep breath, channeling her experiences, the years spent nurturing others, the time lost to self-doubt, and mentally anchored herself in the realization that the essence of art was, above all, a reflection of truth. Mabel understood that her worth wouldn't hinge solely on approval but rather the act of creation itself. Now, as she sensed the pulse of the crowd ebbing and flowing, mixed with her own emotions swinging like a pendulum, one thought rang clear: her journey had truly just begun. With the possibilities of self-discovery stretching before her like an uncharted canvas, Mabel pondered what other obstacles lay ahead, aware that this newfound strength would soon test her in unforeseen ways. As she looked around the gallery, a sense of determination surged. What would she choose next? The real adventure lay in harnessing this momentum, not merely as an artist, but as an ever-evolving woman reclaiming her narrative. Little did she know, the real test was just around the corner, waiting to confront her with the very challenge that had once silenced her for so long. Would she continue to rise as her own advocate? The answer would soon surface, threatening to redefine everything she believed about herself once more. As the hours slipped by in the gallery, Mabel felt a compelling mix of excitement and trepidation. The initial wave of positive feedback had buoyed her spirits, fueling the fire of her newfound resolve. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was an unsettling awareness of the fragility of this moment. The whispers of doubt had only faded to a dull roar. They could erupt again at any moment, negating her progress. An artist approached her. A woman with a striking presence, tresses of gray cascading like silver paint against a warm canvas of skin. She had been observing Mabel for some time, studying her face as if searching for hidden truths. When she finally spoke, her voice was a soothing balm amidst the chaos of emotions swirling in Mabel's mind. "You have a gift," she said, her eyes glistening with sincerity, "but it seems you're still wrestling with something inside you." Mabel felt the urge to shield herself from probing eyes, yet she also recognized an invitation to delve deeper. Here was an opportunity to confront her own reservations, perhaps even heal the scars that had yet to mend. She studied the woman, sensing a shared history of struggle. "It's a work in progress, I suppose," Mabel replied, her voice slightly vulnerable. The woman nodded knowingly. "Art is often the mask we wear to hide our wounds. Is it truly your masterpiece? Or merely a reflection of your pain?" A shiver rippled down Mabel's spine. That wasn't merely an inquiry. It was a challenge. The question swirled in her mind, compelling her to analyze the very essence of her creative spirit. Was the piece a testament to her strength, or a canvas saturated with the remnants of her suffering? "I want it to represent my healing, not just the hurt," Mabel murmured, but as she spoke, a shadow of uncertainty crept back in. Was she brave enough to embrace her entire narrative instead of simply the glossy exterior? The truth felt daunting. As if reading her thoughts, the woman continued, "The strongest art often comes from those wounds. You must let them breathe. It's in that authenticity that the magic happens." Mabel could hear the wisdom woven within those words. Sensing the weight of her own history pressing against her chest, she pondered for a moment about past failures and fears. Each painting before her seemed like a passage to self-discovery. Yet the fear of truly unveiling herself still loomed like a scar in her heart. Gathering strength from her surroundings, Mabel sought solace in the rhythmic heartbeat of her breath. She recognized that genuine art could only emerge when she dared to confront every aspect of herself, the beautiful and the ugly, the triumphant and the broken. With a resolution crystallizing in her mind, Mabel contemplated her next steps. She envisioned upcoming exhibitions, not just of her paintings, but a deeper dive into the very essence of her story. Could she dare to create a series that peeled back the layers, exposing her soul to the specter of judgment again? "Would you join me in a conversation about vulnerability in art?" She blurted out, the invitation surprising even herself. This was a pivotal moment, perhaps even a turning point. The woman raised an eyebrow, intrigued by this shift in Mabel's stance. "I would love that," she replied, her voice exuding an encouraging warmth. The two engaged in passionate dialogue, drawing on experiences that danced along the precipice of pain and liberation. Mabel felt liberated, every shared word chipped away at her fears and doubts. This was not merely a pursuit of approval, it was about claiming the power of her own story. As they discussed techniques, meanings, and emotions, Mabel found ways to intertwine her narrative within her artwork. It was no longer solely about her past, but also about the future she could shape through honesty. With each idea she exchanged, each vulnerability she embraced, a thrilling thought rippled through her. Every brushstroke could encapsulate not just where she had been but where she was going. The energy of the gallery, once overwhelming, transformed into a sanctuary of potential. Drawn into the larger tapestry of the evening, Mabel realized that the true challenge wasn't just being seen, but seeing herself in the rawest light. The foundation of her next chapter had begun to take shape, a blend of hope and struggle intertwined. And just as she felt she was stepping into her strength, a figure emerged from the crowd. A man striking but shadowy, seemed to bear an air of challenge that froze Mabel in place. Who was he and what had brought him there? She could sense that their paths had intertwined with an intensity that promised yet another recalibration of her inner self. The moment had shifted. The confrontation she had anticipated earlier now lay before her in the form of this unexpected stranger. What role would he play in her evolving narrative? The shadows danced around Mabel as the man approached, exuding an energy that both intrigued and unsettled her. His posture was confident, his gaze penetrating, as though he possessed secrets of her past. It was disconcerting yet oddly exhilarating. She recalled her earlier resolve, her commitment to uncover her truth through art. Would this stranger disturb that delicate process? Your work resonates with a depth I seldom see, he said, his voice smooth but firm. There's a story behind it, a truth you're hesitant to share. Mabel felt her pulse quicken. She smiled politely, masking the flickers of apprehension that crept into her mind. It's a personal journey, she replied, resisting the urge to explain further. She wasn't ready to enter the territory of vulnerability he seemed to demand. Isn't that the point? He challenged, tilting his head slightly. To expose the elusive essence of who we truly are? Or are you holding back? His words cut deeper than she expected, stirring an inner turmoil she had only begun to confront. The scrutiny felt invasive. She sensed an unspoken challenge rising between them. Did he see right through her carefully constructed facade? Was he a catalyst or merely a distraction? I believe that art should evoke emotion, but also respect privacy, she said, her tone steadier than her heart. Every artist has the right to choose what they reveal. True, but consider this. He leaned in slightly, igniting curiosity with his intensity. What if what you protect most is the very thing that will set you free? Art thrives on authenticity. Your potential may lie just beyond that threshold of fear. A thread of defiance unwound within Mabel. Who was he to tell her what she could or couldn't reveal? Yet, beneath her defensiveness, she felt a twinge of recognition. She had spent too long shielding parts of herself, believing that her past was too fragmented to be of value. She had skirted the edge of delving into the raw truths of her experiences. In her pursuit of acceptance, had she unwittingly surrendered her power? Why do you care so much? She asked, her voice softer, tinged with curiosity. Your interest feels personal. He chuckled lightly, a sound rich with understanding. Perhaps I see bits of myself in your story. I've struggled to an artist haunted by self-doubt, cloaked in the shadows of my creations. Sharing my truth transformed my work. The unexpected connection unsettled her, yet it flickered a spark of recognition. Mabel was drawn to the authenticity in his vulnerability. Perhaps there was a profound lesson in what he was suggesting. The road to embracing her narrative could not merely walk alongside pain. It needed to charge headlong into it. She hesitated, wrestling with the weight of his challenge. The notion of crafting a series that laid bare her real-life struggles now seemed looming and urgent. Could she trust this stranger enough to explore that potential? I've begun to envision an exhibition, she breathed out, surprised by her own admission. It would reveal parts of me I've hidden away, fear, strength, everything. Art cannot live in isolation, he said, the warmth in his voice creating a bridge of understanding. It reflects our human experience, and by laying bare your truths, you become a beacon for others. It's a form of defiance against the silence that often binds us. Mabel regarded him more closely, sensing a kindred spirit rising from a similar storm. Her heart raced. She was on the cusp of something transformative, a journey that demanded courage she hadn't anticipated. What if I fail? The question escaped her lips, barely above a whisper. Failure is often the first step towards growth, he replied, his assurance washing over her like a balm. What matters is not the stumble but the desire to rise again. That's the art we create. Mabel's breath caught at his insight. Perhaps she was ready to step into that unknown, to embrace what lay beyond the threshold. The path was still shrouded in uncertainty, but for the first time in years, doubt began to lose its grip as determination surged there. Conversation deepened. She began to formulate ideas, a real series, a tapestry of her life experiences balanced between light and shadow. But even as her thoughts blossomed, the man's presence reminded her that each step she took would rewrite the possibilities of who she could become. She was choosing not just to tell her story, but to reclaim it. With every exchange, the flicker of anticipation was matched by fear. She sensed her life and her art were entwined in ways she had yet to fully comprehend. Was this stranger guiding her toward a revelation, or leading her into an entirely new labyrinth of self-discovery? Just as she considered her next move, tension threaded the air anew. He was looking at her, and in that gaze she saw the challenge mount once again. This was not merely a conversation. It was the opening act of a prolonged metamorphosis, one where every brushstroke defined not just her art, but the very essence of her being. Would she embrace the challenge that loomed, or retreat once more into silence? In that pivotal moment, Mabel stood at the crossroads, ready to claim her voice and art. Yet, as the man's enigmatic expression deepened, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that their connection held deeper lessons still to unfold. Where might this lead her next? Mabel weighed the implications of her intention, her thoughts a surging tide of apprehension and inspiration. This intriguing stranger, had lit a spark within her that threatened to ignite her entire being. She felt the weight of expectation settling like a warm cloak around her shoulders, yet doubt clung to her like the shadow that enveloped them both. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly, a way to anchor herself amid the swirling uncertainties. "Damon," he replied, his smile inviting yet serious. "And you?" "Mabel," she said, allowing his name to linger in the air, a soft tether to reality as she wrestled with her ambition. "Why did you come here tonight?" Damon shrugged, that elusive grin playing on his lips again. "Caught wind of the energy here. It pulled me in. Artists often gather where truth lurks in the shadows. I was hoping to see the light break through." "Light through shadow," Mabel echoed, each syllable resonating as if ringing from a bell long forgotten. She had often hesitated to bring light into her shadows, to paint her experiences with vibrant strokes rather than muted whispers. What had she held back that could redeem her? Their conversation rolled on, with each new insight coiling tighter around her resolve. Damon shared snippets of his own journey, the battles fought in silence, the numerous failures that ballooned into a canvas of successes. As he spoke, Mabel felt herself unspooling, her heart racing as memories and emotions surfaced, urging her to confront the very issues she had buried deep within. The question loomed larger. What was her truth? "I've spent years perfecting a style that masks my struggles," she stumbled through her words, feeling vulnerable yet liberated. Every brushstroke was a barrier, concealing more than revealing. "I wonder if I pull back the curtain, what ugly truths will I expose?" "There's beauty in the ugly," Mabel, Damon countered, his gaze earnest. "And your honesty in dealing with it is what will resonate with others. You can't control how the world will react, but authenticity? That's your voice, your legacy." Mabel absorbed his wisdom, allowing it to permeate through her defenses. The winds of possibility blew fiercely within her, challenging her to face her past. What was the worst that could happen? She had already lived through torment. Surely facing it on canvas couldn't be worse. What if I make a mistake? The question slipped out again, an echo of primal fear. "Failures are only invitations for growth," he replied. "Intelligent risks lead to true artistry. You have to find the courage to step into that space. It's yours to inhabit. Don't let fear strangle your narrative." An invisible thread began to weave through her mind. She envisioned each piece she had yet to create, illuminated by the very vulnerabilities she had hidden from herself. It felt daunting, yet the thought coursed through her, what if she truly embraced her own narrative? "I want to pour my experiences into my art, to shatter my silence," Mabel confessed, feeling herself stir with a rebellious energy. "But what will it look like? Where do I even start?" Damon regarded her thoughtfully. "Start at the beginning each time. Seek the moments that made you feel alive, that challenged your idea of self. Your art can tell a story of both joy and pain. When you embrace every part, the impact will resound far beyond yourself. A fresh wave of determination swept through her, competing with the persistent reluctance that had held her captive. Could she truly turn her painful memories into a form of liberation? Suddenly, the prospect of transformation felt both thrilling and terrifying. Mabel found herself at a precipice, ready to embrace the plunge into the unknown. "I'll need support," she murmured, tapping into the raw desire to connect with others in this journey. "Connecting is the bedrock of any artist's success," Damon affirmed, his tone resonating with conviction. "Surround yourself with constructive voices. Form a network of honesty. Challenge each other, grow with each other. This collaboration can harness energy far beyond your singular experience." His words resonated deeply within her, whispering promises of growth and connection. She thought of the art gatherings she had previously dismissed, envisioning them now as fertile soil for her development. But as excitement swelled, there remained a gnawing fear lingering in her chest. What if she stepped into this sphere and found herself enshrouded in judgment? What if her truths fell flat, not evoking the empathy she craved? "Mabel?" Damon's voice shifted, bringing her back into the moment. "Are you ready for this journey?" Her heart raced at the prospect of a commitment, a pledge to wrestle with her truth. Mabel took a deep breath, gathering her composure. It was time to summon the courage she had kept stifled. "I think I am," she replied, her voice steadier than before, though uncertainty still whispered through her mind. "Good." Damon smiled, a sense of approval washing over her. "Now let us take a step together." She nodded, ready to venture into the murky waters of her past with newfound conviction. But as excitement swirled in her gut, Mabel couldn't shake a persistent thought. What would happen when all was laid bare? Could she withstand the intensity that might follow her leap into authenticity? Damon's expression shifted subtly. In their shared silence, Mabel felt the weight of unspoken challenges ahead, a labyrinth of self-discovery waiting to unfold. Would she push through the darkness to reach the light, or would the shadows consume her once more? The decision was hers to make, and the time was drawing nearer. With a renewed sense of determination, Mabel stepped away from the conversation with Damon, though the resonance of their dialogue lingered, much like an echo calling her to deeper truths. She looked around the dimly lit gallery, vividly aware of the art surrounding her. Each canvas looked at her not as mere decoration, but as an embodiment of stories untold and feelings unspoken. Would she, too, become a part of that narrative tapestry, or remain silent within her own? Shaking off her hesitation, she grabbed her phone and began scrolling through her contacts. The familiar names seemed to judge her, each representing a different facet of her life and an avenue for potential connection. Mabel's fingers hovered over her best friend, Lisa, a trusted confidant who would undoubtedly provide the encouragement she needed. But more than comfort, she sought strength. With a deep breath, she shot off a quick message. "Can we meet soon? I have something to share." As her heart raced, apprehension settled into the pit of her stomach. What if her transformations were met with pity instead of understanding? What would Lisa think of the things she wanted to divulge? There was no going back now. Her message was sent, and that single act felt like a bold declaration of intent. Returning her gaze to the artwork, she recognized the process, the layering of paint, the mixing of colors, the way imperfection could evoke intimacy. Mabel realized that each brushstroke told a story, and it occurred to her. She had allowed her own narrative to lie dormant for too long. In one night, the prospect of shattering her silence had shifted from a mere possibility to a necessity for her growth. Several days passed filled with anticipation, Mabel scribbling down thoughts and emotions that rose to the surface like bubbles in boiling water. Once an artist accustomed to vibrant creations that hid truths, she now sought to express the rawness beneath her facade. With each sentence penned in her journal, however, doubt crept in. After all, what made her story worthy of being told? The day of her meeting with Lisa arrived, and as Mabel adjusted her scarf before walking into the coffee shop, she felt an unfamiliar heaviness in her chest. The warm scent of brewing coffee surrounded her, yet the steam rising from the cups mirrored her plight, a haze of nervous energy clouding her focus. "Hey, Mabel." Lisa spotted her, waving with an eagerness that momentarily eased her unease. They exchanged pleasantries while settling into their usual nook, the noise of other patrons fading into the background as Lisa's eyes glimmered with attentive curiosity. Ignoring the thread of fear gnawing at her being, Mabel dove into the heart of her intentions. I've been on a journey of self-discovery, and I feel like it's time to bring my truth into my art. Lisa leaned in, her expression shifting between surprise and support. That's amazing. What do you mean by your truth? And therein lay the crux of Mabel's dilemma: how to articulate the shadows from which she sought to emerge. She hesitated, words mixing with bottled emotions, the air crackling with significance. I've masked my past for so long that I wonder what would happen if I painted the authenticity of my experiences. That's powerful, Lisa said, her voice steady yet intimate, as if she were holding Mabel's vulnerability in her hands. I think people will connect with that level of honesty. It could be incredibly liberating for you. But could it, really? The fear of judgment tightened its grip around her. What if her truth, vulnerable and unfinished, fell flat? What if her attempts to express it resulted in silence rather than resonance? These questions swirled like storm clouds, heavy with the potential of downpour. Mabel leaned back in her chair, searching Lisa's face for reassurance but also mustering the courage to confront her own doubts. What if it doesn't work? What if people don't react how I hope? They might surprise you, Lisa replied empathetically, eyes gleaming with encouragement. But even their reaction doesn't diminish the importance of your journey. This is about you first. Finding your voice. The clouds began to dissipate, revealing the light behind her fear. Mabel understood that this journey had never been about others' perceptions. It was about her liberation. The thought made her heart swell with a blend of fear and excitement. But as enthusiasm mingled with trepidation, her mind raced forward into the future. Would the art she created from her raw truths meet her own expectations, or would it leave her exposed and vulnerable? The conversation opened a floodgate of revelations within her. But before she could settle into these thoughts, Mabel felt an unexpected wave of intensity wash over her. Could she truly embrace what lay ahead? The path was unclear. But one thing was certain: her leap into authenticity loomed larger than ever, almost pulsing with an intrinsic urgency. Mabel? Lisa's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. Are you ready to take that risk? As Mabel considered the possibility of freedom tangled with risk, the realization struck harder than ever. The moment of truth approached, and it beckoned her with both allure and apprehension. Would she dare to embrace the narrative waiting to be illustrated? Or would she slip back into the safety of silence once more? One thing was undeniable. The road ahead required more than courage. It demanded a complete surrender to both fear and creation. Mabel felt the weight of this understanding like a weighty anchor, while the thrilling lure of artistry becomes the rising tide. The question now hung heavy in the air, pulsing with the urgency of her truth. When would she take the plunge? The sound of coffee cups clinking and the low murmur of conversations faded into a distant memory as Mabel sat, feeling the weight of her own thoughts pressing down on her. The world around her seemed to pulse in time with her racing heart. Lisa's question echoed in her mind, its significance weighing heavy. Was she really ready to take that risk? She took a deep breath, drawing in the aromas of roasted beans and sweet pastries, trying to ground herself in the moment. Yeah, she finally answered, her voice firmer than she felt. I am. It's just scary. The admission hung between them, a fragile thread of honesty. Scary is good, Lisa reassured, leaning forward. It means you're stepping out of your comfort zone. That's where growth happens. But despite Lisa's encouragement, Mabel couldn't shake the gnawing uncertainty that lingered like a shadow. Lisa continued, your art could change lives. Think about that. Your story could resonate with someone else who feels silenced. As those words settled in, a flicker of hope ignited within Mabel, battling against the suffocating fear. The thought of using her pain as a palette for her art seemed daunting. But what if these colors she chose, shades of sorrow mingled with vibrant hues of resilience, could indeed create something impactful? Even if it was just for one person, wasn't that enough? I've always painted for others, Mabel confessed, her voice softening. To meet expectations, to fit into a mold. I don't know if I even recognize what I want to create anymore. Then you need to explore that, Lisa said, her enthusiasm infectious. Start by painting only for yourself. Forget the audience. Put everything on canvas without the fear of judgment. It's okay to mess up. that S part of the process. Mabel envisioned the blank canvas, engulfed in possibility. But with every heartbeat, a small voice questioned whether her experiences were worthy of expression. What if no one understands? What if it's just messy? Messy can be beautiful, Lisa replied, her conviction unwavering. Embrace your mess. What I see in you is a depth of emotion that has yet to be explored. You have a gift, Mabel, but part of that is allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Vulnerability, a word that felt both liberating and terrifying. Mabel shivered at the thought, yet something in her stirred, an inner strength that had long been dormant. What if this journey was less about perfection and more about authenticity? The concept of painting her truth began to morph into a thrilling escape, rather than a burdensome weight. Maybe I could start small, Mabel proposed, newfound determination lacing her voice. Just a series of pieces that reflect different stages of my life, emotions I've avoided. I want to capture the rawness of it all. Exactly. Lisa beamed, her excitement rekindling Mabel's fire. You could do a whole collection, each one revealing layers of your experiences. What if you had an opening night? Let it all out. The thought sent a thrill down Mabel's spine, intermingling with nerves. An opening night felt like a mountain she hadn't yet begun to climb. Could she really showcase her truth? But what if the response isn't what I hoped? That's not your focus, Lisa asserted gently. Your focus should be on the act of creating and the healing that comes with it. The reception is secondary. For now, just dive into your soul. Mabel closed her eyes, envisioning the art taking form. It was as if colors started swirling in her mind, a reflection of her tumultuous journey, mingling with her emerging resolve. It suddenly became clear. This was a reclamation. As her thoughts crystallized into a plan, a fresh wave of urgency surged through her. She had to start immediately. Waiting would only breed hesitation. After this, I'm heading straight to my studio, she declared with newfound conviction. I'll begin working on the first piece tonight. I want to capture the feeling of standing at the edge, what it feels like to be afraid yet yearning for something more. See, you're already on your way, Lisa said, pride evident in her voice. You're already taking the leap. But beyond their conversation, a nagging apprehension fluttered in the back of Mabel's mind. This was just the beginning, and she knew the greatest challenge lay ahead, the external world with its judgments and expectations. Would she find acceptance and empowerment? Or would she be met with disbelief and criticism? With her heart thumping and her spirit ignited, Mabel stood at the precipice of her transformation. As she walked toward the door, a mixture of excitement and fear swirled in her gut, urging her forward. In that moment of resolve, the question reshaped itself, becoming her guiding mantra. What would it mean to bravely confront her truth through every stroke of the brush? Tomorrow's canvas awaited her, rife with possibility, but first, she had to reveal herself to a world that might not be ready to embrace her authenticity. Would she find the strength to remain steady in her resolve against the tide of doubt that threatened to drag her back into obscurity? The moment of assertion was near, and Mabel felt on the cusp of something monumental, yet so fragile. Would her truth withstand the scrutiny ahead, or would it crumble under the weight of societal expectations? An unknown orchestration of fears and hopes accompanied her as she stepped into the world outside, preparing for the uncharted territory that lay ahead. Mabel stood before her canvases the next morning, her heart racing. Each blank surface now felt alive with potential, as if they were waiting eagerly for her to pour her truth onto them. The light streaming through her window illuminated the proud colors she had previously avoided. It whispered encouragement, reminding her of the journey she embarked upon just days prior. With her newfound resolve, she picked up her brush, the familiar wooden handle grounding her as she took deep breaths to ease her anxious mind. Today, she would begin her series, aptly titled Layers of Truth. Each piece would represent a significant chapter of her life, a brushstroke of vulnerability, a splash of healing, a line of courage. As she pressed the bristles of the brush against the canvas, she allowed herself to recall the memories locked away. The warmth of her husband's love, the bittersweet laughter of her children, the heavy sacrifices cloaked in obligation. Each emotion ignited within her, twisting and blending into a dance upon her canvas. Her first painting materialized effortlessly. She swirled glazes of blues intermingled with strokes of fiery orange, capturing her fear and hope as though it were a living entity. Mabel lost herself in the process, the act of creation consuming her with purpose. In those hours, the insecurities that had haunted her faded beneath layers of color and shape. She felt her heart pounding in tandem with the brush as she carved out her reality, her essence. Days turned to weeks as Mabel refined her art, each piece becoming more assertive. Friends and family began to take notice, drawn to her vibrant display of emotions. Their support poured in like warm sunlight, counterbalancing her lingering fears. Louise, her dear friend, encouraged her to venture forth into the gallery scene with this new work. "You have to showcase what you've created. You're not just an artist. You're a beacon of authenticity," she had remarked one afternoon, boosting Mabel's bravery. The day of the exhibition arrived, and an electric tension hung in the air. Mabel felt a spectrum of emotions, a mix of excitement and deep-rooted apprehension. What would the audience think? As she stood in front of the gallery, surrounded by guests, the tiny seeds of self-doubt sprouted anew. But as the evening unfolded, unfamiliar faces approached her canvas one by one, discovering the layers of her truth. Mabel watched as a young woman stood quietly before her first piece, tears glistening in her eyes. "This resonates with me," she whispered, touched by the rawness depicted on the canvas. Watching the woman's vulnerability echoed Mabel's own journey. Realizing she had not merely created art but had fostered connection, Mabel's resolve solidified. With each conversation, she shared how her creations stemmed from a desire to reclaim her life, her identity, and emerge authentically. From one stirring discussion to the next, she transformed, becoming a storyteller of her own narrative, no longer confined to shadows but stepping boldly into the light. As the exhibition came to an end, the applause swelled, rich with appreciation and recognition. Mabel stood amidst her audience, absorbing their validation, their acknowledgement of her journey filling her with profound satisfaction. She had not only unleashed her art, but had conquered her fears with each brave stroke. This was not solely an unveiling of paintings but a celebration of who she had become. Weeks later, standing before her easel again, Mabel reflected on the journey she had undertaken. Her voice had emerged, filled with authority and strength. She had created more than art. She had carved out a legacy that extended beyond herself. A legacy infused with vulnerability, inviting others to embrace their authenticity, a powerful circle of inspiration. Mabel knew she would face more hurdles ahead, that fears may come knocking once more. But she had learned the invaluable lessons that stemmed from taking a risk. Honoring her canvas allowed her to honor her past. She had proven to herself and those around her that life could be vivid and courageous, no matter the age. With renewed conviction, Mabel picked up her brush, ready to create once more. Now, she painted not out of obligation but out of authenticity. Each stroke was a testament to transformation, a symbol of triumph. As she finished her next piece, she felt the weight lift, each color infused with newfound confidence. She stood proud and sound, no longer in the shadows. Mabel took a moment, soaking in both her accomplishments and dreaming of what lay ahead. The vibrant world around her danced with endless possibilities, a future alive with hope and stories yet to unfold. This was her moment, and she had arrived. If you found inspiration in Mabel's transformative journey, you need to subscribe now to catch more emotional stories that uplift and empower. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this incredible content. Comment below your reactions and theories about Mabel's evolution. Let us discuss. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, and join the journey of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second. Your support means the world.